Welcome to Inspiring Teachers, a show bringing you classroom tips, motivation, and stories from successful educators. Join Tavis Beam and Danny Hauger as they explore the why of teaching.
Welcome to an exciting edition of Inspiring Teachers. I'm Danny Hauger. Tavis Beam is in the classroom because he should be. We're on a 2-week break here in Brentwood, so it's very nice for me to have some time. Even nicer to catch up with one of my absolute favorite professors from my college, my myriad of college experiences. And Paula Sheil joins me, English teacher at San Joaquin Delta College, longtime feature writer at the Stockton Record. Paula, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Great. It's good to talk about teaching in a positive fashion, let me tell you.
That's what we're all about because we think it's needed. And I have to say, I was in this strange place when I met you where I had gone to Dominican University for a year and a half and ran out of money. My friend Matt had gone up to Chico State, and he'd also run into a similar circumstance. We found ourselves back in Stockton again, almost like the Back in Lodi Creedence song, you know. And
I went to college during that song's popularity.
What a great time, I imagine. And we walked into Delta, and you were our first teacher, or one of our very first teacher experiences. And I think we were, as much as we were kind of excited, we were a little bit maybe hesitant to be back in town. And we weren't sure what we were going to get. And you came out and were one of the most experienced, direct, and one of my favorite teachers that I had all through college. And I want to say thank you for that. And the thing that made you inspiring to me is that you pushed all of us to create something and make something as a final project. And I carry that with me to this day as a teacher. Like, what can I have them do? What can I have them make? And I just wanted to say thank you for engaging us and telling us that we can actually make something, which I think is so impactful to people at any city, at any level, to empower. And you do that. And so I wanted to say thank you for that to start.
Well, I really appreciate it. It made my day. I'm pretty exhausted right now, actually, from running a nonprofit in addition to teaching full time. We just had our major event just a couple Fridays ago. And the push up to that point takes so much energy that, right now I've got a lot of thank yous to send out, but that feels gratifying. I'm building up to exude the best gratitude possible. But I'm pretty tired because teaching is a very demanding job. And I think of it very much like theater, like Roy Schneider and all that jazz. It's showtime. You come to class, you put it out there, you leave it all in the classroom, and you walk away. You don't bring your problems to class. I actually talk to my students about compartmentalizing and being in the moment and totally trying to focus and just bring their energies to the tasks at hand. And then when you're done, boy, it's a ringer if you really teach to the fullest of your ability.
I feel that way too. A good school day at the end, you should feel semi-exhausted, like you really gave it everything you had. I feel like all the energy, the compartmentalizing, to be silly, to be fun, and in the moment, even when you didn't walk in feeling like that was what you wanted, do it anyway.
Sometimes if I have a really negative experience or I do have some baggage when I walk into class, I actually tell them about it. I talk to them about it, explain my problem solving issues or what my options might be to get out of it. And as soon as I talk to them about being a real life person in a real life situation, I say, well, now that I've shared that with you, let's start. And so I do want them to know that teachers aren't, made of marble, and we are real people. And if I share with them how I solve my problems or how I think through them, I think that's as good as any lesson plan.
I love that too, because that connection really breaks through the traditional model of the classroom and lets people know we're both thinking and feeling right now. I am excited to have you talk about your nonprofit, if you like, boosting local authors and creators. Do you want to mention that to the people who might be interested?
Well, in the first place, I've always been a writer. I've been a writer since I was a kid. I grew up during the pen pal era, and I was born in a military family, so a lot of moving around and a lot of friends that I had to leave behind. So I grew up writing letters and short stories, and by about 16 or so, I had declared myself a poet. So I've been a writer and have hosted open mics, published poetry journals. I went from being a writer to being a publisher and a venue provider and sort of an advocate of writing in general. So one of the scholarships that I provide at Delta College is the Writers Guild Publishing Award. So it's not enough to write. You have to take that next step and put yourself out there and publish. And if you're like the author of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, you could go for 140 times before someone finally accepts your work. But it's the idea of, if you're going to communicate, you've got to have the other side of the audience. You've got to have the audience. So anyway, I started a publishing company in 2012, publishing one of our one of my colleagues' novels. And it's so popular, actually, we still use it in the classroom today. It's the story of an African-American athlete, his relationship with his English teacher, and sort of the exploitation of African-American athletes by a fictional CSU system. It's about athletes going through the motions and not really getting a good academic foundation to survive after their bodies have been used and abused. So anyway, it's a very popular novel, and I've gone on to publish 7 more books. But at some point I thought there had to be a way to mentor writers. How do you find them? How do you nurture them? So we actually went brick and mortar. I got some funding from the city, and we started The Right Place. So Tuliberg Press is the name of the publishing company. The Right Place is the center. And at the center, it's allowed me to really exercise my art side, the make it side, as you call it, because we make paper, we do paper marbling, not in a sense just for art's sake, but end pages of books were marbled papers back in the day. So everything that we do is in service of the book, the anatomy of the book. So making paper, doing the printing on a small flattened press, and creating a book, learning various bookbinding techniques. And we have writing groups, of course, so it's a legacy project for me to leave in Stockton a place where the book is celebrated and kids can learn how to do things literally without computers.
Nice. That is
So,
phenomenal on many levels. That's exceptional.
You're going to have to come see it.
Oh yeah, absolutely will do. I was reading on the website and I was like, this is amazing. I'm gotta have a chance to discuss that.
Which also explains why I'm tired today, but thank you.
No, I understand. Totally understand.
Goodness.
How did your journey in education start? When did you make the transition from writing features and doing all the writing that you were doing into the classroom? Because I'm not sure I know that side of the story.
Well, actually, it's a circle. And so I started off in elementary school teaching right out of college.
Okay.
So when I went to college, I had a 4-year scholarship, but I went to a 3-year accelerated program. So I was done with my BA in 3 years and had an extra year of funding. So I got my credential. I was already working in elementary schools anyway, because one of the projects or programs of Raymond College at the University of Pacific was what you would call an internship, but being embedded in the community. So I was working at Martin Luther King Elementary School my freshman year. Then I just progressed through various academic adventures. My 3rd year, I was working with the Oakland, Berkeley, San Francisco school districts as a consortium to help mainstream handicapped kids into the regular classroom. That movement started in the 70s. And it was just, the credential became more and more the goal. And I was teaching 4th grade the next fall when I graduated. So I was in elementary school education for 5 years, and I burnt out. Elementary school teaching is, all those kids in the same class all day long, all the subjects. But what was interesting to me was not just what was happening in the classroom, but putting on plays, putting on like a field and fair day, an outside version of elementary Olympics, having a student store so they could create inventory and sell things to one another, like pencils and paper and peachy folders, and having a school newspaper. So I wanted to do all the rest of the package that goes with the school experience that ties you to the real world. So after 5 years, boom, I got an opportunity to be the first director of the Stockton Arts Commission as a part-time gig. So that's where I took off. And then I circled around nonprofits and program creation and execution, fund development, finally landed back in journalism, and then journalism is what got me back into education. So after working at the Record, I ended up being hired as a faculty member to teach writing as opposed to English, even though we're all in the English department. So I came back in 2001, and that's the circle. And I really like working with adults. I do get a chance to work with young kids at the center, but that's not my primary function there. I have staff who work with the after-school kids. But I really like working with young adults in college the best as an educator, because I like the gnarliness of the topics of the day, and I like watching people incorporate academic reality and turn it into something that's useful in their outside negotiation of the world. It's not a separate thing. You go to school and then you go to work. I like trying to have people figure out how they're thinking, and their absorption of information makes them a person out there.
I think that's really neat. And this sense of identity building is one of the things that made your classroom special, where it didn't feel like, here's a room we sitting to earn units for a certain number of hours. It was you trying to get us to figure out what we had inside of us that could be something. And I remember colleagues that started nonprofits of their own and companies and articles and books because of those projects. And it was one of the few times, because I went to Cal State Fullerton and Dominican and Stockton, Delta and Fullerton City College, where you created an environment where we start looking at each other and realizing how much potential was in the room, because you allowed that environment to happen. And it's not something that even if you want to do as a teacher, you're able to do sometimes. You found a way to empower. And I think that that's I consider you part of the beating heart of Stockton in the positive sense of like, here's what people who really care about the community do. They give people tools to make and create and be better versions of themselves. And because of you, I think I gained more of a voice that when I went to Southern California, instead of being overwhelmed by 36,000 students, I'm like, I need to find a niche. I need to find my family here. Then ended up the general manager of Titan Radio, and then ended up working for the Angels at AM 830. And I think of myself as a pretty shy kid from Stockton growing up that didn't speak out a lot, and you helped me refine. So I wanted to have a chance to say thank you. And I think it's everything you said was true, that when you were looking for ways to not just learn but apply to the world around us, that's how we find our own cycles and circles to get in and out of and see avenues that we didn't see before. So that's pretty cool. And I like that a lot about your approach to the classroom.
Well, I think that the lecture model, the old Socrates, sitting under a tree, posing the questions and getting the answers, so many people really like to create, and art has been removed from every day. We don't make our own utensils. We don't make our own blankets. We don't make our own tools in which to navigate. Everything's mass produced. So the idea that you make your life too, and you're involved in the creation of the things that you use, is really empowering. So that's how people find voice too, because your creation, I mean, they don't all have to be good. And there's just a meme that's going around right now about, you don't have to be good at art to enjoy it, and you don't have to be good at art to apply it. And I like the idea of everything that you do is art, really, because it's the idea of thinking something, the old, I think, therefore I am, but I'm going to think it into reality, and it's mine, and here it is. And whether it's a utilitarian thing or an actual art piece that's more abstract or just the embodiment of an idea, if you don't create, you die. I think pretty much that's the way it goes.
I think of it in the sense of, since we're all going to die, we might as well create something in the meantime anyway.
Right.
Yeah. So that's been kind of my path. When I was in your class, I created a guitar tab book and wrote what became my first album. And now I write a song a week and put one out every year. And so I'm grateful that I got into that cycle of creation, where it's whether or not I have an idea, let me try to sit and see what comes out. And some are better than others. And you learn to cut down and trim and pick what is best. But then the audience will come. It might not be the size that you're thinking, but because it's not the mass produced and it's not the perfectly keynoted to every beat, that becomes more real. So that's really neat. That's really neat.
I had a thought there that because I coughed, I lost it, but it was the idea of the other important thing about just creating for creation's sake is then you learn to edit. And you learn to revise, and you get over that, because perfection is the enemy of the good. That's one of the fallacies, a fallacy of thinking. And so many of us are brought up, you can't do it right, don't do it at all. Second place is the first loser, all of that sort of nonsense. And so if you basically are in the process of creation to create, then you really get much better at editing and taking criticism and knowing the good from the bad, the mediocre from the whatever. And so you learn how to refine and revise and edit and then take criticism, whether it's self-criticism or the fact that you have an audience and they're going to pick up on some things and not on others. But if you don't do enough creation, then revision is harder and you place more importance on the things you did produce. So produce a lot and weed frequently.
There you go. What is one thing that as students leave your classroom and leave your course that you would like them to carry with them besides just what they learned in your class? What are something you hope that they have gained from experiencing your teaching?
I'm going to have to say that the answer I'm going to give you is one that students have given me, and not that I realized, but it's basically because I grew up in a family, a pretty dysfunctional family, and I have been my own parent. I have been my own mother, my own father, my own grandparent, my own sage, my own shoulder to cry on. And so I feel like, number one, you have to create family. You have to create a sense of cooperation, and you have to be vulnerable. I don't want people to feel isolated. I don't want people to feel that they don't belong. I want people to fit in, but I want them to accept responsibility for each other. So the family thing is important. Mm-hmm. And people have said that, well, your class was more about life than about writing, or more about life than English. And I think everything's about life. So I'm kind of good with that.
Yeah, I like that very much as well. Do you have any words for somebody who's just stepping into the classroom for the first year, and any advice that you'd want to impart before we take off for the day?
Fight the Borg. Fight the rigidity of the systems that are placed on us by people who graduated from college and went on to become administrators and chancellor groupies. And oh my God, if the system doesn't kill you, you can teach. So you've got to learn to negotiate principles and administrative rules and regulations and all of the crap that comes with it. But when you're just teaching, when you're in that room, as autonomous as you can be, that's heaven.
Yeah, that is great. And that is a great place to close and say, Paula Sheil, thank you for so much advice and wisdom. Do you have any links or social media that you want to share with our audience?
How about just tulibergpress.com? And you can check out the nonprofit from there and come see us in Stockton. We are the only book art center in the Valley.
Paula Sheil, thank you so much for joining us on Inspiring Teachers, and I hope to keep in touch and let us know how we can help you here at the show too.